From London, this is the Standard Podcast, and I'm Mark Blunden.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
Donald Trump made an astonishing return to the White House on Monday when he was sworn in as the 47th President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
The inauguration, which took place at the US Capitol Rotunda building due to minus 3 degrees C temperatures, follows 4 tumultuous years out of office, which saw the 78-year-old Republican businessman and ex-reality star survive assassination attempts and face a series of legal cases. In part 2, we'll have policy analysis with a top US politics expert. But first, we asked Mike Rogers, Chief Security Analyst West at US-based International SOS, about security arrangements around the event.
In short, they're quite extensive. There's a great deal in place today to prevent any sort of significant security incident. So you've likely seen that the swearing-in ceremony has been moved into the Capitol building due to weather, and likewise, the parade that typically follows that has been moved inside as well to Capital One Arena. But to sort of summarize the efforts underway, there's a very large perimeter around where all these activities will be centered today. Vehicular traffic is restricted to this large perimeter all around the National Mall. Inside that perimeter, there is a number of security checkpoints for pedestrian traffic. And then as we get to this sort of interior perimeter, pedestrian traffic at all is restricted within that sort of inner ring. Outside of that, there's a number of nearby road closures all around the center of Washington, D.C. Subway stations, for example, have been closed into the 21st, as I understand it, and there's been a diversion of local bus routes. So beyond that, there is a great deal of police presence across the city. I believe it was something of like 25,000 different law enforcement agents are deployed across the city from federal, local, state. And then lastly, about 7,500 National Guard troops are in the city today.
And how would these arrangements have changed or indeed escalated after the assassination attempts on President Trump? And how would it have compared to other inaugurations, recently Joe Biden and previously Barack Obama?
Yeah, really important question, and just to sort of start with, certainly since that time, they've been tested and reviewed thoroughly, assumptions have been challenged, etc. And in addition to the assassination attempts that you referenced over the summer, I would also point to the recent events in New Orleans, as well as Las Vegas, the terrorist attack in New Orleans, which killed 15 people and injured dozens more, as well as the explosion at the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas, which injured many people and killed the perpetrator. So those certainly point to this sort of heightened threat environment that the security authorities, law enforcement are certainly considering as they build out this plan. But I do also want to highlight that this is what's known as a national special security event. So the planning for an event like this is actually many years in the making. It's quite different from what we would see at a campaign event or a golf outing, the types of preparation that goes into those events that security plans for that Donald Trump's assassination attempts unfolded at. Authorities are really confident that they're able to contain these threats, but in light of what you described, certainly I'd venture to guess they've deployed some more personnel as well as examined a number of other threat vectors that they're monitoring at this stage.
And in terms of the Trump Team 2.0, who can you point to that will be some of the names to watch on Trump's security and military side? And do we know anything about a new direction of travel in terms of policy and strategy?
This is a really important aspect of what our intelligence teams are monitoring and supporting our clients with as we forecast, sort of read the tea leaves, how could things evolve here. There's some obvious ones, and this is again presuming that everybody is confirmed in the Senate, but they'd be the potential Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Mike Waltz, National Security Advisor, Tulsi Gabbard, DNI. These are all really important figures along with some others. There's sort of divergent worldviews across that group, but broadly speaking, some things to consider is that many of these are known as what's called prioritizers. So these are people whose belief system with respect to the U.S.'s role in the world would prioritize focusing on this competition with China rather than potentially other theaters such as the Middle East, Europe, and Russia and Ukraine, for example. So that's an important element of what our team is studying at this moment and forecasting for the next several years ahead.
You're speaking to us from Philadelphia. How would you sum up the mood in the country today? And is there any kind of optimism that we can look to achieve, or that the American people can look to achieve more unity than we've seen in recent years?
It is a bit tense, and the threat environment, I think worth pointing out, the threat environment is indeed high. That's related to the fact that this major political development is underway. The transfer of power is, under all these circumstances, one in which there's a great deal of political tension, and that raises the threat environment as a result, as well as the fact that Americans are very politically and ideologically divided at this point in time. And then lastly, the information environment, the fact that it is marred by mis and disinformation, that plays a role as well in elevating the threat environment here. But to your point, I think it remains to be seen. I'm rather confident that we're going to get through the inauguration and the transfer of power without any sort of major security incident. And from there, hopefully we'll forge ahead and perhaps see a great deal of stability as we progress.
That was Mike Rogers, Philadelphia-based Chief Security Analyst West at health and security services company International SOS. The ceremony was attended by Trump's family, including his wife Melania, along with Joe Biden and Barack Obama. Trump's White House run saw new alliances with more billionaires and big tech moguls, notably Elon Musk. Musk joined Apple boss Tim Cook, Google's Sundar Pichai, and Amazon's Jeff Bezos at the ceremony, along with Trump's coterie of new colleagues.
The inflation crisis was caused by massive overspending and escalating energy prices, and that is why today I will also declare a national energy emergency. We will drill, baby, drill.
Among his policy priorities include a promise to sign around 100 executive orders on his first day in office, including those on oil drilling, the US-Mexico border, and gender identity, plus the release of classified documents on the JFK and Martin Luther King Jr. assassinations. In London, anti-nuclear campaigners and climate activists protested against the presidency. A judge previously sentenced Trump to an unconditional discharge in a hush money payment case, which will still mean he is the first US president with a felony conviction. Let's go to a quick break. Coming up in part 2, UCL politics expert on Trump's big tech alliances and what to expect on foreign policy. All clips in this episode have been courtesy of the Associated Press. Welcome back. Earlier today, The Standard's Rachel Abbott spoke to University College London's Dr. Thomas Gift, Associate Professor of Political Science and Director of the Centre on US Politics. They discussed big tech's influence and the direction of policy for Trump's White House 2.0.
Would you be able to explain the significance of Trump's relationship with Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg?
Well, Democrats have been saying for a while that there's a co-president in Elon Musk, and I think there's certainly something to that. Of course, Elon Musk played a very pivotal role during the campaign. He spent $75 million of his own funds to get Donald Trump elected, and at least from his perspective, it was money well spent. Certainly, if you look at the cabinet composition with this incoming administration, it has more billionaires than any administration before. We have seen individuals like Jeff Bezos, like Mark Zuckerberg, go and visit Donald Trump in Mar-a-Lago. And I think it does raise some interesting questions about this relationship between kind of Donald Trump and the big tech. Joe Biden, in a farewell address a few days ago, said that America is increasingly being ruled by oligarchs, by which he meant that kind of wealthy individuals are exercising undue influence over American politics. And I think there's certainly reason to be worried about that. There's reason to be worried about conflicts of interest. With Elon Musk in particular, he's also heading up the Department of Government Efficiency, which, although not an official government department, will have an important advisory role looking at ways to cut spending. So certainly Donald Trump has surrounded himself by individuals in big tech.
And obviously, speaking of Elon Musk, we've seen him tweeting on UK politics as well as Europe. Could the UK's relationship with the US change?
We always hear about this special relationship between the United States and the UK. And I think to a large extent, it's built on kind of personal rapport among the leaders. During Donald Trump's first administration, he really had a good working relationship with Boris Johnson. Understandably, they shared the same politics. You could even say that they had the same personalities. Looking ahead to this next administration, it's hard to see Keir Starmer and Donald Trump getting along on a personal level, much less on politics. So I still think that the two countries will have a strong bond. I think that they're still going to be involved in sharing intelligence, working together in some ways on the international scene. But I don't expect that that relationship will be quite as chummy as potentially it was before.
With Trump's second term, do you think he'll do things differently?
Donald Trump really perceived the main mistake that he made in his first administration as being surrounding himself by inside the Beltway types, essentially longstanding public servants who had spent their entire careers in Washington. This time around, it's much, much different. Donald Trump is surrounding himself by loyalists, those who have kind of expressed fealty to him for quite a long time. I also think the fact that Donald Trump has had 4 years in office means that he kind of knows what to expect, and he knows how to operate the gears of power in Washington a little bit better. And go back to 2016, no one really expected Donald Trump to win, and I think you could say that he went into office unprepared. That's definitely not the case now. Donald Trump has a very clear agenda of what he wants to achieve. Chief among that is imposing tariffs on imports to the United States, particularly from China, carrying out the largest mass deportation in history, finding ways to get inflation under control, and trying to rein in federal spending. I think that those are very ambitious goals. He certainly won't achieve all of them. He essentially, I think, has 2 years to get that through. Typically, we think about presidents having a honeymoon period. He's coming in with what he can at least say is an electoral mandate. And he's coming in with a unified Congress, both the House and the Senate are Republican. That certainly helps him. At the same time, I think it's important to note that Donald Trump can't get everything he wants through simply because in the Senate, Republicans don't have a 60-vote majority, which would allow them to override the filibuster, which is essentially just a tactic that the opposition party can use to stall legislation. Additionally, there's quite a lot of disagreement even within the Republican Party, particularly when it comes to government spending. There's kind of the MAGA wing that is very loyal to Donald Trump. Then there's the House Freedom Caucus, which, although it has MAGA elements, is much more skeptical of government spending. And I think that you're going to see both interests of Donald Trump as well as those interests kind of come in conflict with one another over the course of the next couple of years.
And what do you think Trump will do in regards to the Russia-Ukraine war?
Well, I think certainly Donald Trump will place more pressure on Zelensky to strike a deal with Putin. Donald Trump famously said that he would end the Ukraine-Russia war in a day. He's since backtracked from that statement and acknowledged that maybe there's some more difficulties than he had maybe articulated. But I think essentially what this is going to involve is some degree of capitulation to Putin. It's probably going to block any future pathway for accession to NATO by Ukraine, and it's probably going to involve some type of land concessions. I still think that this is going to take some time to work out. You know, it's unclear exactly how much Zelensky is willing to compromise, but certainly I think the pressure behind the scenes is going to be more so than we saw during the Biden administration. And of course, if you just look at public opinion data, particularly on the Republican side, Americans are pretty wary of injecting more money into Kyiv. So I think that just that general fatigue with the war is probably going to mean even more so that Zelensky is going to feel the pressure to strike some type of a deal.
And that's The Standard. For the latest news, head over to standard.co.uk. This podcast is back tomorrow at 4 p.m.